Our team presses leaders. Where is the sense of urgency? A suspect is in custody who police say was involved in the armed carjacking at Towson University. We talk with residents and students as the investigation continues. A Baltimore father is behind bars accused of pulling a gun on his son's basketball coach. The slew of charges he racked up and why police say he shouldn't have had a gun in the first place. More than 30 members of the infamous NFL gang are off the streets of Baltimore.
There's a lot more work to do.
Why Maryland's top attorney is concerned another group could take their place.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Another week in Baltimore's crime crisis claims more lives in Baltimore. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Maxine Stryker. 7 Baltimore City students have been shot and killed this year. You're looking at some of the victims right here. The latest murder happening at a gas station in Northeast Baltimore yesterday. Today we learned the victim is a 20-year-old student at Achievement Academy.
Bullets have no names on them. Wake up, young folks, wake up. People, please know what your children are doing. Find out if they got guns. Talk to your children. I'm tired of seeing kids dying on the streets of Baltimore.
We have team coverage of the crime crisis facing Baltimore and other parts of Maryland.
Let's begin with Mackenzie Frost to question Governor Wes Moore about how leaders are responding.
We're questioning some leaders about where's the sense of urgency when it comes to this problem of youth violence. Meanwhile, Governor Wes Moore is on national news touting Maryland's violent crime strategy as it's working.
It is good to be with you.
From one public event in Baltimore Friday to another, Governor Wes Moore not answering questions, especially when asked about the rise in young people either getting shot, killed, or pulling the trigger. How is this working? The governor getting in his car and driving off to his next thing. Our question comes as Governor Moore was on CNN Thursday talking national politics.
You support the president's moves on both of those, and what do you make of this pivot?
And touting efforts to curb the violence.
When I think about the state of Maryland, we know that our impact and the work that we're doing right now, both with the federal government and the local government, to reduce violence in the state of Maryland, that it is working, and we plan on continuing to double down on that investment.
After the governor drove away from questions, we followed up with a few, especially about the 23 teens shot this year in the city and 7 students killed, asking, why is there not more attention on this trend of students being killed in Baltimore right now? Moore's team giving us a statement, not answering the question directly about how his plans are working, but saying, quote, Governor Moore has made it clear keeping Marylanders safe is one of his chief priorities, adding, Maryland has a governor now that is dedicated to tackling this important issue head on. Governor Moore is proposing $17.5 million for Baltimore police in his budget proposal. That proposal being debated in Annapolis as the budget process plays out. Meanwhile, City Councilman Robert Stokes says the students finding themselves on either side of a gun is a problem rooted in the home.
The whole family, the parents got to be involved in this. Yeah, we can use all the platform we want.
But you guys aren't right now.
I have brought up the hearings on youth violence and school violence. Once they leave school and once they're off the school grounds, we don't really have control of that piece.
Do you think that city schools should be doing more to keep students in the building during the school day? I mean, we're seeing a lot of this happen during school hours.
Well, I think I think the school does as much as they can, but the parents have to know what their kids are doing also.
But when the parents send their students to school, they trust the school to make sure that their students are safe.
And I think it should be everybody.
While Stokes and others look to everybody involved for solutions, Baltimore's young people continue to be impacted by the city's crime crisis. Councilman Stokes says that he has held hearings in the past about youth violence, and if he holds another one, he says he'll think about inviting families to participate. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And yesterday, Mayor Brandon Scott acknowledged the rise in violence among young people. The mayor says the city is launching a violence prevention program in city schools. Today, the mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, MONSE, announced a grant of $375,000. That will be distributed to 8 community organizations for the pilot program Sidestep. Now, the office says the organizations will work with selected young people and their families to provide, quote, transformative assistance.
And time is ticking for lawmakers in Annapolis to act on crime legislation. Monday is crossover day. Right now, Democrats are pushing for more wraparound services in an attempt to prevent anyone younger than 25 from being charged with felony murder. There have also been talks to make changes to recent laws that prevent kids 13 years old or younger from being charged with a crime.
So they cannot enter into an entire life of criminality, and they can understand the consequences for their actions.
But is that happening right now with that law?
So I can't say, because it only came into place recently, right? So, I mean, I think the hope is that over time it's going to be better.
Republicans, meanwhile, are pushing for a bigger crackdown, including a repeal of Carter's legislation and backing the Violent Firearms Offender Act to implement tougher penalties for repeat gun offenders. That plan not likely to pass.
Not only have we not addressed crime, but we've actually taken steps in the opposite way.
What pieces of legislation do you think should be passed in these final weeks that could address the growing trend of young people addressing their conflicts using handguns?
It depends on who the shooters are. I think there's a function where some of those repeat violent career offenders keep popping up because of the prior policies of the city state's attorney.
Well, we want to know what you think. Are elected leaders taking the crime crisis seriously enough? So far, 100% of voters say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
There are new developments tonight surrounding that early morning carjacking on the campus of Towson University. Jeff Abel is live right now with the latest turn of events in this case. Jeff.
Well, campus police tell us tonight that one of 4 suspects is now in custody tonight, accused in an armed carjacking that went down right in the heart of campus. On the Towson University campus today, few students seemed fazed by the violence that happened early this morning.
I do believe there are some students who are genuinely concerned.
It happened at 3 o'clock this morning while most students were sleeping. But in a parking lot behind Millennium Hall, police say 4 carjackers armed with a gun went on the attack. In a campus-wide alert, administrators described the incident, telling students 4 males, one armed with a black handgun, stole property and a gray Honda vehicle from the victim. They did not confirm whether the victim was a student.
Yeah, it bothers me. It bothers me a lot.
On campus today, some students were questioning security.
Do I think things could be done in the area to make it a little safer? Absolutely, but there's only so much you can do when you're in Towson and you're near Baltimore.
Off campus, the community has recently been plagued with a string of violent attacks. Last month, 4 women were sexually assaulted in the Towson Circle. Days later, a teenager was shot dead on a street near the Towson Town Center. And now an armed carjacking on campus.
Seems to be getting into younger and younger groups.
Tim Webster has lived near this campus for 40 years and has watched the school battle to keep crime off the campus.
They do pay attention. It's just that you can't be everywhere all the time.
Again tonight, one of 4 suspects now in custody. It is still unclear whether that stolen vehicle has been recovered. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Now, crime has been on the top of mind for people who live in or visit the Towson area. Several incidents have happened recently, including the murder of a 17-year-old near Towson Circle. We spoke with Baltimore County Executive John Olszewski on plans about making Towson safer.
We will not tolerate and don't tolerate violent behavior. And in wake of those high-profile incidents you mentioned, Patrice, we actually convened business owners, the police, the community leaders, members of the government, and we had a strong and swift response to it. Subsequent to, we have stepped up patrols with police departments. We have foot patrols, and we're looking at bike patrols in the Towson corridors. We are expanding our grants for cameras to have full coverage of the Towson corridors. We have additional lighting. We've partnered with the sheriff's office to have additional deputies out on nights and weekends. We're looking at additional security, so to have private security further bolster our police department, because we want everyone to both be safe and to feel safe.
Well, noon tonight, a Baltimore father is in jail after police say he threatened an elementary school basketball coach with a gun, and it's all over his son's playing time. Keith Daniels is live tonight with the full story.
Well, Maxine, that father is behind bars tonight. He's currently being held without bail. He's accused of a serious crime that police say happened at his son's school. In Northeast Baltimore, what must have been some scary moments inside Leith Walk Elementary Middle School. Police say a father inside the building with a gun, threatening an elementary school basketball coach over his son's playing time. Edna Phillips,
it's bad. It's a bad look.
Who lives near the school, heard about it when it happened. Now, word of an arrest.
He had all those kids looking at him, as of even his son, so that wasn't a good look for his father.
Baltimore police have arrested 48-year-old Troy Spencer. His charges include first-degree assault, second-degree assault, reckless endangerment, and several handgun violations. The confrontation happened March 6th. According to charging documents, police responded to the school for reports of an armed person. Once there, the coach told police that during the game, Spencer confronted him over his son's lack of playing time. At this point, Spencer pulled a loaded 9mm handgun from his waistband, pointed it at the coaches, and said, "You better put my son into the game." Then, according to charging documents, Spencer and another coach got into a struggle over the gun on the sideline of the basketball court. The coaches were able to disarm Spencer, at which point he ran from the building and drove away. School police arrested him Wednesday.
Well, we have to be accountable for our actions. Hopefully he'll see that what he did wasn't justified enough to want to pull out a weapon to hurt the coach. Glad nobody was hurt.
That's right. Now, charging documents also reveal that Spencer has previous charges that would have prevented him from legally carrying or having a firearm. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
All right, Keith, thank you. Well, St. Patrick's Day weekend is here. It is upon us. This is a live look from Fells Point. This is the Horseshoe Came In On Saloon, I believe, right there on Thames Street. This is a really popular area to be. And you can imagine Fells Point, Maxine, Jasmine, packed tonight, right? Every area probably of the city.
Yes, for
Federal Hill, Fells Point,
all
Mount
the Irish
Vernon.
bars, yeah.
You know it, right? South Baltimore, Cherry Hill, every place.
Yeah, don't you wish you were there?
I do. Let's go.
Nice Guinness.
Can we leave? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But we
And it's
would
pretty
need
mild
our
out.
rain gear if we were
Okay.
to go anywhere. We are starting to see showers move into the Baltimore area. The rain is on the lighter side, so that's the good news. But if you are driving anywhere in the next couple hours, you will be driving through showers and possibly over wet roads. Make sure that you're driving safely. This is all a part of a larger system. This cold front is moving across the state. It's leading to those showers, and it's also going to result in much cooler temperatures as we head into the rest of the weekend. By Sunday, we're looking at lows or highs in the 40s. But we are in for a warm up for the work week. I'll let you know what you can expect coming up in my Weather Authority forecast. Back to you.
People who are facing a significant time in prison, they are not always the most rational.
The federal search for Roy McGrath continues. Authorities are looking for the former aide to Governor Larry Hogan. The latest on that search.
Biden says Putin has clearly committed war crimes.
What's Washington doing for Americans worried about their bank accounts? And can lawmakers prevent more bank failures in the future? I'm Scott Thuman on Capitol Hill to explain.
Fox 45 News, winner of 17 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is now a wanted man. The International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant for him today.
It's a rare move. In fact, the court is charging the Russian president with war crimes related to the forced deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia. Now, this essentially means authorities would have to arrest Putin if he traveled to countries where the ICC jurisdiction is recognized.
The ICC is doing its part of work. As a court of law, the judges issued arrest warrants. Their execution depends on international cooperation.
The Kremlin responded saying Russia does not recognize ICC jurisdiction, calling the charges meaningless, outrageous, and unacceptable. President Biden is speaking out.
I think it's justified, but the question is, it's not recognized internationally by us either. But I think it makes a very strong point.
Well, the indictment comes just hours after the Chinese government announced President Xi Jinping will visit Putin on Monday.
You're looking now at live pictures of the White House. President Biden says his administration and the Federal Reserve can only do so much to stabilize the banking industry. He says Congress needs to get involved. According to the House, legislation is necessary because it should be easier for regulators to rescind banking executives' compensation if their banks collapse, as well as impose civil penalties and ban executives who mismanage risk from operating in the industry again. But that's not all.
During the Obama-Biden administration, we put in place harsher regulations on banks to make sure that the American people were protected. Those were then rolled back in the Trump administration. So we've got to take a hard look at what additional regulations we need to put in place.
Well, that's in reference to a law passed after the Great Recession that puts banks through stress tests. It was reformed in 2018 to exempt certain banks, like one of the banks that collapsed recently, from such tests.
Let's take a look right now at the Fox Quad Box. It's been just made public that a nuclear power plant in Minnesota leaked 400,000 gallons of radioactive water last November. It's by Minneapolis-based utility Xcel Energy. The company says there's no danger to the public, and the state is monitoring the cleanup.
Also in Minnesota, Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis officer convicted in the death of George Floyd, pleads guilty to 2 counts of tax evasion. Prosecutors claim he and his ex-wife underreported their joint income by more than $460,000 from 2014 to 2019.
YouTube will restore former President Donald Trump's account. The platform suspended his account 2 years ago after the January 6th Capitol attack. That move follows similar actions by Twitter and Facebook.
An insulin manufacturer, Sanofi, is lowering the cost of its product. They say it plans to cap out-of-pocket costs for its insulin at $35 per month for people with private insurance. Companies are facing pressure from the White House to cap costs after the Inflation Reduction Act limited monthly costs for Medicare beneficiaries.
President Biden's son Hunter is suing a Delaware computer repair shop owner. It's over embarrassing photos of Biden and questionable business deals on the laptop. This is the latest action in the saga that first erupted in the final weeks of the 2020 election.
National correspondent Kayla Gaskins explains how another member of the First family is now tangled up in a probe in Washington.
The list of Biden family members profiting off deals with Chinese businesses continues to grow.
Part of being president is that you probably shouldn't be engaged in foreign business dealings or have members of your family profiting off of it, particularly with China.
Hallie Biden, the widow of Joe Biden's son, Beau, who later had a relationship with her brother-in-law, Hunter Biden, received money from a deal with a Chinese company, according to financial records released Thursday by the House Oversight Committee. Biden family associate Rob Walker orchestrated the $3 million deal less than 2 months after Joe Biden left office as vice president in 2017. Walker then dispersed more than $1 million of the Chinese funds to companies associated with the president's son, Hunter, brother, James, daughter-in-law, Hallie, and another yet-to-be-identified Biden.
The concern about the flow of money is that there doesn't seem to be any discernible, legitimate service that was performed by the Biden family for this money.
In a statement released to numerous news organizations, Hunter Biden's lawyer says this money was for an investment and Hunter Biden, a private citizen with every right to pursue his own business endeavors, joined several business partners in seeking a joint venture with a privately owned, legitimate energy company in China. The Daily Caller reporting this Chinese company, State Energy HK Limited, is closely tied to the Communist Chinese government.
We don't find any evidence where they ever took the money and invested it in a company. People always talk about, well, Hunter Biden had legitimate business dealings with China. What were those business dealings?
On Friday, Committee Chair James Comer said they will subpoena the Biden family associate, Rob Walker, who conducted the 2017 deal with the Chinese energy company. They hope that Walker will be able to answer questions they've had for years, mainly if any of this money can be traced back to the president. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Well, the drinks are flowing, but it's all dry. We take you to Annapolis for a new nightclub experience. And the Maryland women's basketball team dominating their first round matchup. We're looking ahead to what's next for the women and the men as we enter the second round of the NCAA tournaments.
Right now, we have showers moving across parts of the state, all associated with our next weather maker, a cold front. The showers will continue over the next few hours, but tomorrow we're back to nice and dry weather, but cooler temperatures follow the cold front. I'll let you know what you can expect for the weekend coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
In NCAA first-round games under head coach Brenda Freese, Maryland entered the day at 17-0. Terps with a chance to keep that record spotless and defend home court in College Park. 2-seed Maryland getting 15-seed Holy Cross right off the bat. And they were on fire. Take a look at the score. The Terps opened the game on a 14-0 run. Brene Alexander had a game-high 18 points second quarter. This one was getting out of hand. Diamond Miller gives the Terps a 24-point lead. To the fourth we go. Abby Myers getting buckets. She finishes the game with 16. Terps win big in College Park. 93-61 the final score. So the Terps move on to the second round where they will face 7-seed Arizona. The game will be played this Sunday in College Park as Maryland looks to advance to its third straight Sweet 16. So both Maryland basketball teams are on to the second round. After pulling out a win over West Virginia, Kevin Willard's squad gets the #1 overall team in the NCAA tournament, and for good reason. That's the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah, they're a very talented team. They shoot the three ball very well. So, trying to guard the three well, trying to get back in transition, trying to rebound as good as we can. I feel like we have a good chance.
They have a very good team, and their whole starting five, even some of their bench guys, they have a very good team. So you just got to lock on all of them.
Talk about madness. Rip up those brackets. Fairleigh Dickinson becomes the second 16 seed ever to beat a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. The Knights join UMBC. It's been 5 years and a day since the Retrievers upset Virginia. How about that? Coming up tonight, hear from Brenda Fries following the Terps' blowout win over Holy Cross. Plus, we'll reveal our Prep Player of the Week on the late edition of Sports Unlimited.
Remembering Lance Reddick, word tonight that the Baltimore native has passed away. And it's certainly an unusual headline why Maryland Governor Wes Moore is asking for a catfish disaster declaration. Well, St. Patrick's Day celebrations are in full spring. You're looking at live pictures in Fells Point where people are out and about tonight. If you have any celebrations this weekend, meteorologist Jasmine Lomax is keeping an eye on the weather for you. She'll join us in just a moment with more.
And if your celebrations include that green beer and alcohol, you should listen up as authorities are encouraging safe drinking, especially this weekend. We have an exclusive story out of Annapolis where a group is doing something very different.
If someone uses the term night clubbing, we tend to think nighttime, dark interior, lots of people, music, entertainment, a bar. Club 164 has all of that except
no alcohol. No alcohol. We built this club to just change the narrative.
Minutes, we'll take you inside what's happening at Club 164. Making headlines right now, Baltimore native and actor Lance Reddick has died at the age of 60 according to TMZ.
Reddick is best known, of course, for his roles in HBO's The Wire and in the John Wick movie series. So far, the cause of death is not yet known, but TMZ reports police believe he died of natural causes. Reddick grew up in Baltimore County. He earned a Master's of Fine Arts degree from Yale.
We have an update right now. A second person has died from injuries in a southwest Baltimore apartment fire last month. 5 people were hurt in that fire. A woman died days later. Today, the fire department says the second victim, a man, died this morning. Authorities have not released his identity. The cause of the fire is under investigation. And a top state aide turned fugitive. The search for Roy McGrath continues. At one time, he was chief of staff for former Governor Larry Hogan. He failed to show up for his federal fraud trial on Monday in Baltimore, and McGrath's lawyer says he still doesn't know where he is. Investigators have raided his Florida home, but have not revealed what they found.
We're going to interview neighbors. We're going to look to seek the family members. We're going to do everything we can to develop investigative leads.
Well, he is accused of stealing more than $270,000 from the state. He's indicted on federal charges, including theft, wire fraud, and falsifying records.
And at the same time, that same councilman was arguing for stopping gas-powered leaf blowers. That's the focus of the councilman in that district. That's insane. That type of foolishness is why so many people in Baltimore are coming up to me and other members of Peace and saying that they like the idea of a recall effort because maybe they shouldn't have to wait if their council person is being completely unresponsive for another 4 years while you have children being shot in the street.
Community members continue to speak out against current Baltimore leadership. They point to a number of issues, including crime, a struggling education system, and lingering problems with the Department of Public Works. Now, given the problems in Baltimore City, some are wondering how taxpayer dollars are being spent.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor is digging into the data to learn what the city is doing with your tax dollars.
Yeah, every year those inside City Hall decide how and where billions of your tax dollars are spent. So today I investigated some of the biggest expenses and found some major concerns. It's tax time, a time for calculating how much you owe, but also for tracking where it all goes. In total, Baltimore City operates on a $4 billion budget, of which $1.5 billion comes from your property and income tax alone. So what is your money buying in Baltimore? Turns out some of the city's biggest costs aren't reaping the best results. Funding the Department of Public Works cost the city a whopping $632 million. And yet,
this is disgraceful.
I pick up trash too much. Many complain their curbs are littered with garbage, while others are fed up with the pileup of recycling following the switch to bi-weekly collections. In a new lawsuit filed by city residents, dozens are even calling the year of rolled back services a violation of city charter. Funding the city school system is another massive expense at $333 million. That's nearly $21,000 per student. It's one of the highest school budgets in the nation, but the school system's performance was recently ranked the worst in the state. Graded on a 1-star system, the Maryland Education Department only gave one city school a 5-star rating. 29 were given 1 star and 83 just 2 stars, meaning 75% of city schools are struggling. And finally, $9 million funds the Baltimore City Council. They're the officials in charge of overseeing city spending, a responsibility some Baltimore City residents say
I see a lot of things that I'm not pleased with.
They're failing to uphold.
Tears come to my eyes to see the waste.
People in Baltimore City are getting fed up to pay so much in taxes and not to get anything in return.
According to taxpayer advocate David Williams, if tax season is the time to watch where your money is going, election season is the time to show city leaders what you think of how they're spending it.
Everything starts at the top with the mayor. So there are a lot of people responsible for what's happening in Baltimore City, but ultimately the leader of the city is the mayor, and he needs to take responsibility for this.
And Williams says last November, voters already started making their voices heard at the polls when they overwhelmingly passed term limits for elected officials. In Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Well, the leader of the notorious gang officials say terrorized the Baltimore community for years is now sentenced to 3 decades in federal prison.
Alexa Ashwell spoke with the U.S. District Attorney for Maryland. She has the new concerns now that this gang has been dismantled.
More than 30 members of the NFL gang are now off the streets of Baltimore. But now there's concern another gang or criminal enterprise may try and take over its territory. Normandy, Franklin, and Loudon, 3 neighborhood streets off Edmondson Avenue in southwest Baltimore that for years marked the territory of the NFL gang. This week, its leader, identified as Gregory Butler, sentenced to 30 years in federal prison.
This takes someone who's been extremely violent out of our communities.
The Maryland U.S. Attorney's Office first announcing this 50-page indictment against members of the NFL back in 2020. Then investigators outlined how the gang used fear, intimidation, and even murder to hold this neighborhood hostage for years. The NFL, an LLC for its drug operation. Investigators detailing how members sold heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine, were responsible for overdose deaths, and would commit violent acts, including murder. Now, 2.5 years later, more than 30 people who investigators say were involved or associated with this gang are in federal prison.
We believe we, pretty well dismantled this particular gang, but there's a lot more work to do.
That work, Maryland U.S. Attorney Eric Barron says, includes ensuring no other gang or criminal enterprise takes over the NFL territory, and the cycle repeats.
Sometimes you may take down one violent organization and others pop up. So we're following up in ways that we haven't before, and really expanding our federal partnership with the community and state and local law enforcement. Gangs really are kind of a force multiplier with respect to violence, so that when you take them down, you significantly and dramatically can improve public safety in the neighborhood.
The Baltimore Police Commissioner was part of the original announcement, this 50-page indictment back in the fall. It was then he stressed the importance of these federal partnerships. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
A bit of an unusual request from the governor. Wes Moore asking for a catfish disaster declaration.
That's right. The governor described a serious threat to the Chesapeake Bay crab population. It's already kind of in jeopardy. Brad Bell with our Sinclair sister station in Washington has a closer look at the governor's concerns.
This is what's causing all the concern, the invasive blue catfish. Eastern Shore waterman Dave Confair reeling them in one after another in this video shared by the Department of Natural Resources. The big fish filling his coolers.
I don't think people realize the size and how many are really out there. The numbers are unbelievable.
The fish were first introduced into Virginia waters in the 1970s as a recreational opportunity for fishermen. There are now so many, there is fear they'll displace native species, literally eat so many blue crabs, there'll be few left for your crab feast.
We have been growing more and more concerned about the high densities of these animals that we're seeing in our surveys.
Lynn Fegley is in charge of fisheries and boating for the Maryland DNR. She says a direct link has not been established between declining crab and striped bass numbers and the explosion of blue cats, and also snakehead fish. But the evidence, she says, is mounting.
Our argument is that the densities of these fish could start to interfere in some way with our marquee commercial fisheries, including striped bass, blue crabs, white perch, yellow perch, you name it.
And so now Governor Wes Moore is requesting a federal fishery disaster declaration for blue catfish, sending this letter to the U.S. Commerce Secretary, seeking federal funds to do something about it.
If the assistance is granted, the funds could be used to encourage watermen to harvest more catfish out on the bay and to create a market, get more restaurants to put it on their menus.
Last year, 726,000 pounds of blue catfish were harvested in Maryland, a 287% increase in just 10 years. Biologist Allison Colden with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation says that's not enough.
With the number of fish that are out there, the number of fish that the watermen are harvesting and still seeing a ton of fish out there, they have to be having an outsized impact on the ecosystem.
Governor Moore's letter saying something needs to be done before these fish become, quote, an unmanageable disaster. In Annapolis, Brad Bell, Fox 45 News.
Ford is recalling more than 1.5 million vehicles, the models affected. And former President Trump slowly being given back his social media accounts. why services are allowing his return years after the January 6th riots.
And I'm keeping track of showers currently moving across the state. This is all associated with the next weather maker. I'll break down the impacts coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
It was scary. A lot of people screamed. The windows were doing this, were fluctuating like the vacuum or something, you know.
Cleanup is underway in the south after a destructive line of storms overnight. Thousands of people left in the dark. Golf ball-sized hail and gusty winds left behind damage in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. The conditions flooded roads and prompted several tornado warnings. The roof tore off of this car dealership and spread debris across the parking lot. This storm, part of the same system that pummeled California earlier this week, dropping several inches of rain and stirring up gusty winds. Dozens of counties remain under a state of emergency. Utility crews, they're scrambling to restore service as the state braces for yet another round of storms early next week.
We don't have,